Good morning, friends. Pastor Sara here with our sermon time for the morning as we continue our journey of practicing prayer together through Lent. Thank you just for your continued grace for me to be able to do this, to make the video beforehand and preach to you in this way while I am on my own journey, one of rehabilitation from post-concussion syndrome. My brain thanks you just for the continued chance to film this ahead of time so I can focus on being with you on Sunday morning. So thank you for that. All right, so today, to get us started, just a quick question for you. Just have you noticed, and I'm sure that you have, how 99% of the time, when someone asks, hey, how's it going? What do we say? It's good, I'm good, right? But I wonder how often, when we say that, are we actually feeling good? Because my friends, how often is the answer much more complicated than I'm good? So last week in our journey of practicing prayer, we talked about and experienced meditation through mindfulness meditation, through drumming, through our practice of Lectio Divina. Did you have a chance to practice some meditation this week? I sure hope so. Part of how we enter into meditation is by checking in with ourselves, our bodies, just kind of taking stock of how we're actually feeling, giving ourselves permission to recognize those real feelings, naming them as okay. Today, similarly, it lifts up this practice of self-awareness, of honestly naming and expressing what it is that we feel. Because today, we name again, it's something that we come back to again and again at Salt House. We name that authenticity, vulnerability, is absolutely central to living in the image of Christ, to following Jesus, to living the life of God. And today, specifically, we're talking about tears. I want to bring us back to that question that we asked at the beginning of our worship time. How did your family respond to tears? And really the emotions that fuel those tears, like anger, sadness, and disappointment. How did your family express those emotions? Did they? What expectations and reactions were associated with them in your family? So most families are not great at creating space for the expression of those more difficult emotions. So if your family fits into that description, just know that you are not alone. Our families are affected by the wider cultural climate. We are enculturated with the idea that tears are mostly not okay. Would you agree? It's part of why we're patterned into this practice of telling ourselves and others that we're good. I'm good. You're good. We're all good, right? But emotional awareness, having a finger on the pulse of how we're actually doing, is not something we access easily. To the point that tears in our culture are often treated as a source of shame, as a source of embarrassment, or even a source of weakness. Think about it. What do we often say when we start to cry in front of someone else? Oh, I'm sorry, right? Isn't that interesting? Have you ever apologized for tears or wanted to? Or maybe you haven't because you don't cry in front of other people. And so I encourage you just to be in touch with your own story and with how you have been formed and how you express tears. Just know kind of your own story with that. And in light of all of this, today we name that tears are good, right? That making room in ourselves to really access what we feel, to express those feelings, the anger, the sadness, the disappointment, that is good and necessary for us. Not only because every scientist, therapist, psychotherapist will tell you that, but also because the Jesus story tells us that too. So one of the poignant moments that we encounter this in the Jesus story is in John's Gospel. It's chapter 11. It's what we know as the raising of Lazarus. So you may remember Lazarus and his two sisters, Mary and Martha. We also know them pretty well. So they are good friends with Lazarus, the three of them, or with Jesus. Lazarus has been sick, so Jesus is sent for to heal him, but Jesus doesn't get there in time. So by the time he does, Lazarus has been sick for 4 days. And as Jesus hears of Lazarus' death, the entire verse, it is John 11:35, the entire verse says, "Now Jesus wept." A whole verse. Jesus then arrives at the place where Lazarus is buried, and he raises Lazarus from the dead. And we could get so caught up in that miracle moment. Jesus raises a dude from the dead who's been dead for 4 days. But perhaps just as powerful, we find Jesus bursting into tears. It's one of the most remarkable moments in the entire gospel. Jesus wept. Jesus let his tears flow. Even though he likely knew that he would resurrect Lazarus in just a few moments, he didn't choose between grief and hope. Equally remarkable, nor does he force anyone else to. Jesus doesn't tell Mary to be ashamed of her tears or to stop that. He did not tell her that grief signaled a lack of hope or a lack of trust in God. Instead, Jesus cries with her, showing us how grief and hope can coexist in followers of Jesus, not as an either or, but as a both and. We can be good, I'm good. We can feel like life is good because it is, and yet also make room for the tears too. My friends, this is it, right? We've said it before here at Salt House, and we'll keep saying it, that as followers of Jesus, we're invited into wholeness, to be people who feel all the things. So we bring this all up today in our Lenten journey, our conversation of prayer, because prayer isn't about putting on some kind of posture, or pretense, and pretending everything is good. I'm good. We're good. But it's about showing up fully in ourselves, which is what we do this week as we dive into the prayer practice of lament. To lament, to cry out, a passionate expression of our own grief or sorrow, to wail, to grieve. I wonder, do you have ways of practicing lament? And do you practice them? I think most of us probably don't have a very formal way of doing that. I think it probably happens, at least to some degree, in those spontaneous moments of, when things just become too much and it bursts out of us, or just those help me Jesus kinds of moments when we reach the end of our patience or our rope or our energy. But do we have regular ways of practicing it? What is clear and what we want to name is that God's people have always been people who lament. Though looking around at the current shiny, happy, glossy version of Christianity that we often see around us, it's hard to know that this earthy, raw honesty is our tradition. In many ways, it's been lost. But it is our tradition, and we share this tradition of lament with our Jewish brothers and sisters. Ever heard of the book of Psalms? Yeah. The book of Psalms is this gigantic book. It's in the middle of the Bible. It's 150 chapters, 150 psalms. They are there, and they're often divided into 5 to 8 kind of categories or genres, depending on who you talk to. There's 5 to 8 different types of psalms. And the largest genre, can you guess? Of course, it's lament, hands down, no matter how you slice it. But why is it? Why are there the most psalms that are lament psalms? Well, because people have got pain, right? Anger, sadness, disappointment. And because people throughout time have discovered what happens when we access our pain and give it voice and give it tears, and when we look to see how God joins us in the crying out, like Jesus with his friends who grieved Lazarus. There in the tears throughout time, people have experienced that presence of God, the diamond essence of God, in and around them, in lament. So my friends, this is a form of prayer that we're going to practice in just a moment, but first, I want to invite us into 3 simple kind of additional ways to practice lament in the week to come. You ready? 3 things. But again, I know it sounds like a lot, but it's not much, I promise. They're just 3 sort of little things. The first is this. I challenge you this week to be willing to, when asked how you're doing, to take a moment to actually, don't do the gut response, but actually give it a thoughtful, honest answer. The answer can still be, I'm good, if that is how we're actually doing, right? But what would it look like for us to actually be people who practice sharing how we really feel? And, maybe not every time. There are just times when you just have to say something quickly and move on, like the grocery store checkout line. It's not always the best place to really get into it, but it could be. So that's the first thing. The second, what would it be like for us to be people who stop apologizing for our tears? So this week, I challenge you to practice not apologizing for your own tears. And third, the final challenge, I challenge you to answer the question that only you can answer. And it is this: what will it look like for you to practice lament this week? Maybe in a way that you could hold as a regular practice for you. Justin McRoberts, in our book that we're reading this Lent, Prayer, 40 Days of Practice, in today's meditation and practice, he lays out some really simple ways to practice lament in walking and writing and letting God into our lament. So I encourage you to take a look at that and to answer this question. Make a commitment and put it on your calendar or set an alarm on your phone. I would invite you to even just have a negative idea about it now, to do it now, to write that down before you leave today so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle of the week, as so many things easily do. I know for me that whatever book I'm reading or show or movie that I'm engaged in generally makes me cry. Anyone with me? Yeah, right? And I've realized that in those times, it's making room in me to let out some of those tears, some of that lament that is in there that's been stored up. So it's just kind of one side practice of lament, if you will. So I do invite you to feel free to get creative about what lament can look like in your life. All right, so those are the three things. Tell it like it is when people ask, stop apologizing for tears, and find out, explore, practice what lament can be for you. And now we will also practice lament here together, this form of prayer. So we're going to finish our time by doing just that. We have a bit of setup and then the experience itself to make that happen. And as we do this, there's no expectation that there must be tears, but really just creating space to listen for the lament in our own hearts that may have been stored up. So how we will practice this, there are kind of two movements to this experience. The first, we're going to have a chance to write and reflect quietly on our own. And then the second piece is that we're going to have the chance to bring one lament forward to share, to pray collectively. So you have the choice with that to speak the words yourself, or to have one of us read it anonymously, or simply just leave it silently on our grief wall. So I'll explain the logistics of that in a minute, but that's what we're moving towards, okay? So for this first phase, we'll be writing. So we have no better blueprint to follow than that of the Psalms of Lament. It's shocking just how brutally honest and vulnerable and raw these Psalms are when you really read them. Listen just to the first 4 verses of Psalm 13. This is in the Message version. Long enough, God. You've ignored me long enough. I've looked at the back of your head long enough. Long enough, I've carried this ton of trouble, lived with a stomach full of pain. Long enough, my arrogant enemies have looked down their noses at me. Take a good look at me, God, my God. I want to look life in the eye, so no enemy can get the best of me or laugh when I fall on my face. Man, we hear how there's no pulling punches about what, just the depth of feeling there, right? And this is all addressed to God, right? Lament addresses God with this kind of intensity and vulnerability. This is what we kind of allow ourselves to access today. So you should have a piece of paper that you got when you came in with a list of psalm phrases down the side. I invite you to pull that out and give us a wave if you need that or if you need a pen as we move forward. So these are phrases that are common across the Psalms of Lament. We're using them now as a starting place for us, letting the words of the Psalms become our own words of anger, of grief, of disappointment. So I'm going to read these phrases aloud, especially for people who might be watching or listening later. And as I do this, you're listening for which of these connect to your own laments at this time. I kind of felt like I could pick any of them, be like, yep, I can just run with that. But see if any jump out at you in particular, otherwise just choose some to run with. But there is one, I just really identify with what we just heard. Long enough, God, right? Long enough has my brain and body not felt like my own. Long enough have I felt the trauma and shock and pain and been unable to do what is asked of me. Long enough have I waited to feel at home in myself again. Long enough, or the more common way that we see that phrase is often, how long, O Lord? So let these phrases be a prompt to write and name your lament. You may make a list of different things that are going on or that have happened in your past that are still with you, or like pick one and really write a couple phrases about that and get into that, kind of like I just did. So just don't get stuck in the form of it. This is really just a practice of crying out to God. Just start with one of the prompts and go. You heard the brutal honesty of Psalm 13. How would you speak to God about where you are feeling anger, sadness, or disappointment? What do you want to say to God without pulling any punches? That's lament. So have that paper out. We settle in, we breathe deeply in this moment, that the breath, the ruah of God, that Spirit of God that is here with us and in us, as we open ourselves up to lament, beginning with these words from the Psalms. How long, O Lord? Help me. Deliver me. I'm ashamed. I messed up. I am so angry. I am so sad. I miss them. Why, God? Where are you in this? That's not fair. Have you abandoned me? Is there hope? Friends, now take just a few moments, not overthinking it, as we write our lament. Now you can keep adding to your writing for as long as you'd like, but we also get ready to speak our lament out loud together. So to prepare for that, listen up just a little bit. Don't leave that space of writing, but tune in just for a minute to maybe I'm going to ask you to pick one phrase. How are you crying out to God regarding one thing? So that's all we're doing, just lifting up one phrase, one thing. It could even be one word if you'd like it to be. And maybe the one thing is the thing that is most present to you today or has been with you for a while. The thing is kind of aching or scratching at you the most. Try beginning with one of the psalm prompts if you'd like to and how you phrase that. But you don't have to. We don't need an explanation. We don't need to understand or know what it means or know who it's referencing or what it's referencing. It really is just crying out to God. And so I invite you to rip off a piece from your paper that you have, at least about a business card size or bigger, and we'll just take a moment to write down that phrase, our lament. So you can keep working as you need to on this as we begin to just open space for sharing at whatever level you feel comfortable. So again, here are those 3 ways you can respond. First, there's a microphone up front. You can simply come up and pray your lament into the mic. Then after speaking, you can attach your lament to the grief wall. This is really a chance for you to let your voice speak your lament. Or if you prefer, your second option is to fold up that piece of paper and send it to the center aisle. And then it'll be gathered up, and we will pray that for you anonymously. So we'll have someone start gathering those now, so jump on up and start doing that, and then they'll keep walking around and gathering those. So if you need to just kind of, at whatever point, give them a wave to get that from you. That's the second option. Third, you can just hang on to it and bring your lament to the grief wall during communion in a few minutes. And as always, you don't have to do any of this. Engage in whatever way you feel comfortable. We're going to surround our experience of this with a song of lament as well. O Lord, hear my prayer. We'll be singing that throughout our time. So Ryan and Joelle are going to come up now and be ready to pray our laments. Ryan will open us up with a prayer and we'll sing briefly. Then Jason will kind of give the nod. And for those who want to approach the microphone, come on up, form a line if you need to. And then we'll kind of have to feel our way out based on whether people are coming up or passing in their prayer. So there'll be some pauses, but we'll just kind of hold that space together as we figure it out. So it'll be a little bit messy, but so are our messy lives and just this raw reality of lament that we offer and we hold together now.
Does it feel a little scary? It's a little bit scary, right? I grew up in a spirituality that said, this is not okay. And yet, it's in our scriptures. that says something about our God, right? So God, we, even with kind of the trepidation around, gosh, can we bring this to you? Is this okay to bring to you? We have this faithful witness here before us that says, yes, I want you to bring it to me. Please bring this to me. I am actually the perfect place for you to bring this to, right here. Thank you that you are this kind of God, that you are a safe place for us to bring our angst, for us to bring our disappointment, our loss, our deep sadness. Thank you, God, that you are so acquainted with our grief. So receive it now, first in song and then next as we voice it to you.
Oh Lord, hear my prayer. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. When I call, answer me. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. Come and listen to me. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. When I call, answer me. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. Come and listen to me. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. When I call, answer me. Lord, hear my prayer. Oh Lord, hear my prayer. Come and listen to me.
I am ashamed of who I am. Why can I not just be honest with my granddaughter? Right. Why do I feel unsafe? Like I have to bottle myself up, keep quiet, and only be myself around my dearest love? Why, God, have you not just been clearer? Why did you give us words to, I'm not sure this one here, to fight over, to weaponize, and terrorize people that we don't understand?
Why is there separation in my marriage? That's not fair that I have a chronic disease. How long, O Lord, until my children can get along and be kind to each other?
Why did you hide your presence from me?
I miss them. Why did they have to die? My life has been so full of loss.
I'm so sad, God, that my two brothers have not spoken in 12 years. Is there hope?
I gave thanks to God for my dead son, my firstborn, like God gave his firstborn. The sky burns, and I know God is close. So weak am I. Words are so fragile. I'm so far from where I want to be. Glory be to God. Glory be to God. Glory be to God.
Why, God?
I'm ashamed and embarrassed at my lack of self-control.
Help me to trust you in all things.
That's not fair. My brother got to get something and I don't.
Why am I angry?
God, the overwhelm is up to my neck and it's hard to breathe. Come quick, like now, help me.
I miss them every day. I look for their guidance and love and miss it.
Is there hope in a future family of my own?
How long, O Lord, before people will reject hate?
Help me to be patient. I miss them. I miss the way these relationships used to be. I feel a hole in my life in their absence, and it grieves me to watch them struggle.
Any other laments? We'll hold some space here, and the mic is open.
Lord, hear my prayer. Oh, Lord, hear my prayer. When I call, answer me. Oh, Lord, hear my prayer. Oh, Lord, hear my prayer. Come and listen to me. Oh, Lord, hear my prayer. Oh, Lord, hear my prayer. When I call, answer me. Oh, Lord, hear my prayer. Oh, Lord, hear my prayer. Come and listen to me.
Thank you so much, my friends, for the brave work of creating this experience of lament together, just to feel that in the room together. As we close our time, it's important to let one more piece of lament, what we see in the Psalms, let that inform our practice here. You see, in the book of Psalms, though the laments, start out with this raw pain or anger or disappointment that's there, they always include a word of hope and trust. That God is with them, that it will work itself out with God's help. Like in Psalm 13 that we heard earlier, I read that, how long, oh Lord, this long enough, God. So after all of that, long enough, God, the psalm continues and it closes with this. God, I've thrown myself headlong into your arms. I'm celebrating your rescue. I'm singing at the top of my lungs. I'm so full of answered prayers. To hope like this, my friends, it does not diminish the authenticity of the pain that we feel, because grief and hope can coexist. Anger and hope can coexist. Both and, just as Jesus shows us with Lazarus. And so as our final word with our lament, we let the hope and the trust creep in alongside our pain and anger. My friend, let's take a moment with that piece of paper to name our hope too. What can you write in response to your lament? What have you seen of God's presence in this hard thing? Or what hope do you hold fast to? So just as we've listed or written out or engaged with that list of Psalms, we begin to look for the hope too. So as we close, I'm going to pray just a few statements of hope from various Psalms. And I invite you to listen if part of one speaks to you. If you hear a phrase, maybe jot that down or write your own word of hope on the page alongside your words of lament. Then our papers get to be something that we take home with us today, the full expression of our lament, the grief and anger and the hope together, the both and in our lament. So we let these phrases from the Psalms become the closing of our prayer, hope held with our grief, God with us even in what seems like absence. So friends, we breathe and we pray. God, you are my refuge and my portion. God listens the split second I call out. I never lose sight of your love, but keep in step with you, never missing a beat. My strength comes from God who made heaven and earth and mountains. At day's end, I'm ready for sound sleep, for you, God, have put my life back together. Your beauty and love chase after me every day of my life. O Lord, hear our prayer indeed. God, we thank you that hope and lament can coexist, that there can be light even in the midst of our tears. May we continue to be people who embrace our tears and the hope that comes with them. Amen. Amen.